A gentleman of high standing in British society naturally requires a valet. An individual to pick out his clothing for him, keep the place tidy, occasionally get him out of a scrape or two. Jeeves Takes Charge by P.J. Wodehouse. Read by Karl. Now, touching this business of old Jeeves, my man, you know, how do we stand? Lots of people think I'm much too dependent on him. My Aunt Agatha, in fact, has even gone so far as to call him my keeper. Well, what I say is, why not? The man's a genius. From the car upward he stands alone. I gave up trying to run my own affairs within a week of his coming to me. That was about half a dozen years ago, directly after the rather rummy business of Florence Cray, my Uncle Willoughby's book, and Edwin the Boy Scout. The thing really began when I got back to Easby, my uncle's place in Shropshire. I was spending a week or so there, as I generally did in the summer, and I had to break my visit to come back to London to get a new valet. I had found Meadows, the fellow I had taken to Easby with me, sneaking my silk socks, a thing no bog spirit could stake at any price. It transpiring, moreover, that he looted a lot of other things here and there about the place, I was abruptly compelled to hand the misguided blighter the mitten, and go to London to ask the registry office to dig up another specimen for my approval. They sent me Jeeves. I shall always remember the morning he came. So it happened the night before I had been present at a rather cheery little supper, and I was feeling pretty rocky. On top of this, I was trying to read a book Florence Cray had given me. She'd been awarded the house party at Easby, and 2 or 3 days before it, I've left me got engaged. I was due back at the end of the week, and I knew she would expect me to have finished the book by then. You see, she was particularly keen on boosting me up near her own plane of intellect. She was a girl with a wonderful profile, but steeped to the gills in serious purpose. I can't give you a better example of the way things stood than by telling you that the book she gave me to read was called Types of Ethical Theory. When I opened it at random, I stuck a page beginning, "The postulate or common understanding involved in speech is certainly coextensive, and the obligation it carries, with the social organism of which language is the instrument, and the end of which is an effort to subserve." All perfectly true, no doubt, but not the sort of thing to spring on a lad with a morning head. I was doing my best to skim through this bright little volume when the bell rang. I crawled off the sofa and opened the door. A kind of darkish sort of respectable Johnny stood without. "I was sent by the agency, sir," he said. "I was given to understand that you required a valet." I'd have preferred an undertaker, but I was told him to stagger in. He floated noiselessly through the doorway like a healing zephyr. That impressed me from the start. Meadows had flat feet and just a clump. This fellow didn't seem to have any feet at all. He just streamed in. Had a grave, sympathetic face, as if he, too, knew what it was to sip with the lads. "Excuse me, sir," he said gently. Then he seemed to flicker and wasn't there any longer. I heard him moving about in the kitchen, and presently he came back with a glass on a tray. "If you would drink this, sir," he said, with a kind of bedside manner, rather like the royal doctor shooting the bracer into the sick prince. "It's a little preparation of my own invention. It is the Worcester sauce that gives it its colour. The raw egg makes it nutritious. The red pepper gives it bite. The gentlemen have told me they found it extremely invigorating after a late evening." I wouldn't have questioned anything that looked like a lifeline that morning. I swallowed the stuff. For a moment it felt as if something had touched off a bomb inside the old bean. It was drawing down my throat with a lighted torch, and everything seemed to get all right. The sun shone in through the window, birds tweeted in the treetops, and generally speaking, hope dawned once more. "You were engaged," I said, as soon as I could say anything. I perceived clearly this cove was one of the world's workers, the sort no home should be without. "Thank you, sir. My name is Jeeves." "You can start it at once?" "Immediately, sir." "Because I'm due down in Easby, in Shropshire, the day after tomorrow." "Very good, sir." He looked past me at the mantelpiece. "There's an excellent likeness of Lady Florence Cray, sir. It's now 2 years since I saw her ladyship. I was at one time in Lord Worpsledon's employment. I tendered my resignation because I could not see eye to eye with the lordship, and desired to dine in dress trousers, a flannel shirt, and a shooting coat. Couldn't tell me anything I didn't know about the old boy's eccentricity. This lord was Florence's father. He was the old buster who, a few years later, came down to breakfast one morning, looked at the first cover he saw, said, "Eggs, eggs, eggs, damn all eggs," in an overwrought sort of voice, and instantly logged it for France, never to return to the bosom of his family. This, mind you, being a bit of luck for the bosom of the family, for old Worthington had the worst temper in the county. I'd known the family ever since I was a kid, and from boyhood up, this old boy had put the fear of death into me. Time, the great healer, can never remove from my memory the occasionally found me, then a stripling of 15, smoking one of his special cigars in the stables. He got after me with a hunting crop just the moment I was beginning to realize what I wanted most on earth was solitude and repose, and chased me more than a mile across difficult country. If there was a flaw, so to speak, in the pure joy of being engaged to Florence, it was the fact she rather took after her father, and one was never certain when she might erupt. She had a wonderful profile, though. "Lady Florence and I are engaged, Jeeves," I said. "Indeed, so?" There was kind of a rummy something about his manner. Perfectly all right and all that, but not what you call chirpy. Someone gave me the impression he wasn't keen on Florence. Well, of course it wasn't his business. I suppose that while he'd been valeting old Worplesdon, he must have trod on his toes in some way. Florence was a dear girl, and seen sideways, most awfully good looking, but she had a fault that was tendency to be a bit imperious with the domestic staff. At this point in the proceedings, there was not a ring at the front door. She even shimmered out and came back with a telegram. I opened it. It ran, "Return immediately. Extremely urgent. Cast first train. Florence." "Rum," I said. "So?" "Oh, nothing." Shows how little I knew Jeeves in those days, and I didn't go a bit deeper into the matter with him. Nowadays, I would never dream of reading a rummy communication without asking him what he thought of it. This one was devilish odd. What I mean is, Florence knew I was going to Easby the day after tomorrow anyway, so why the hurry call? Something must have happened, of course, but I couldn't see what else it could be. "Jeeves," I said, "we shall be going to Easby this afternoon. Can you manage it?" "Certainly, sir." "You can get your packing done and all that?" "Without any difficulty, sir." "Which suit will you wear for the journey?" "This one." I had on a rather sprightly young check that morning, to which I was a great deal attached. I fancied it, in fact, more than a little. It was perhaps rather sudden till you get used to it, but nevertheless an extremely sound effort, which many lads at the club and elsewhere had admired unrestrainedly. "Very good, sir." Again, there was a kind of rummy something in his manner. It was the way he said it, don't you know. He didn't like the suit. I pulled myself together to assert myself. Something seemed to tell me that, unless I was jolly careful and nipped this lad in the bud, he would be starting to boss me. He had the aspect of a distinctly resolute blighter. Well, I wasn't going to have any of that sort of thing, by Jove. I've seen so many cases of fellows who have become perfect slaves to their valets. I remember old Aubrey Fothergill telling me, with absolute tears in his eyes, poor chap, one night at the club, he'd been compelled to give up a perfect pair of brown shoes, simply because Meakin, his man, disapproved of them. You have to keep these fellows in their place, don't you know? You have to work the good old iron hand and the velvet glove we use. Give them a what's-it-name, they take a thingamy. "Don't you like this suit, Jeeves?" I said coldly. "Oh, yes, sir." "Well, what don't you like about it?" "It is a very nice suit, sir." "Well, what's wrong with it? Out with it, dash it." "If I might make suggestions, sir, say were brown and blue would hit to some quiet twill. What absolute rot." "Very good, sir." "Perfectly willing, my dear man." "As you say, sir." I felt I'd stepped on a place where the last stair ought to have been, but wasn't. I felt defiant, if you know what I mean. There didn't seem to me anything to defy. "All right, then," I said. "Yes, sir." Then he went away to collect his kit, while I started in again on types of ethical theory and took a stab at a chapter headed Physiological Ethics. Most of the way down the train that afternoon, I was wondering what could be up at the other end. I simply couldn't see what could have happened. Easby wasn't one of those country houses you read about in the society novels, where young girls are lured out to play baccarat and then skinned to the bone of their jewelry and so on. The house party I left consisted entirely of law-abiding birds like myself. Besides, my uncle would have let anything of that kind go on in this house. He was a rather stiff, precise sort of old boy who lived a quiet life. He was just finishing History of the Family or something she'd been working on for the last year and didn't stir much from the library. It was quite a good sense of what they say about it being a good scheme for a fellow to sow his wild oats. I'd been told in his youth Uncle Willoughby had been a bit of a rounder. You'd never have thought it to look at him now. When they got to the house, Oakshott, the butler, told me that Florence was in her room watching her maid pack. Apparently there was a dance on at a house about 20 miles away that night. She was motoring over some of the Easby lot and would be away some nights. Oakshott said she told him to tell her the moment I arrived, so I took her to the living room and waited. And presently in she came. A glance showed me that she was perturbed, and even peeved. Her eyes had a goggly look, and altogether she appeared considerably pipped. "Darling," I said, and attempted the good old embrace, but she sidestepped like a bantamweight. "Don't! What's the matter?" "Everything's the matter. But you remember asking me when you left to make yourself pleasant myself pleasant to your uncle?" "Yes." "The idea being, of course, at the time I was more or less dependent on Uncle Willoughby. I couldn't very well marry without his approval. And though I knew he wouldn't have any objection to Florence, having known their father since they were at Oxford together, I hadn't wanted to take any chances. So I told her to make an effort to fascinate the old boy. You told me it would please him particularly if I asked him to read me some of the history of his family. Wasn't he pleased? He was delighted. He finished writing thing yesterday afternoon and read me nearly all of it last night. I've never had such a shock in my life. The book is an outrage. It's impossible. It's horrible. But dash it, the family weren't so bad as all that. It's not a history of the family at all. Your uncle has written his reminiscences. He calls them recollections of a long life. I began to understand. As I say, Uncle Willoughby had been somewhat on the Tabasco side as a young man. It began to look as if he might have turned out something pretty fruity if he'd started recollecting his long life. If half of what he's written is true, said Florence, your uncle's youth must have been perfectly appalling. Willoughby began to read and put straight into a most scandalous story of how he and my father were thrown out of a music hall in 1887. Why? I decline to tell you why. It must have been something pretty bad. Take a lot to make them chuck people out of music halls in 1887. Your uncle specifically states your father had drunk a quart and a half of champagne before beginning the evenings, he went on. The book is full of stories like that. There's a dreadful one about Lord Emsworth. Lord Emsworth? Not the one we know. Not the one at Blandings. Most respectable old Johnny, don't you know? Doesn't do a thing nowadays but digs in the garden with a spud. The very same. This is what makes the book so unspeakable. It's full of stories about people one knows who are the essence of propriety today, but who seem to have misbehaved, when they were in London in the 80s, in a manner that would not have been tolerated in the forecastle of a whaler. Your uncle seems to remember everything disgraceful that happened to anybody when he was in the early 20s. There's a story about Sir Stanley Gervais at Rossville Gardens, which is ghastly in its perfection of detail. It seems that Sir Stanley... But I can't tell you. Have a dash? No. Oh, I shouldn't worry. No publisher will print the book if it's as bad as all that. On the contrary, your uncle told me that all negotiations are settled with Riggs and Ballinger, and he's sending off the manuscript tomorrow for immediate publication. They make a special thing of that sort of book. They published Lady Carnaby's Memories of 80 Interesting Years. I read them. Well, then, when I tell you that Lady Carnaby's memories are simply not to be compared with your uncle's recollections, you will understand my state of mind. And father appears in nearly every story in the book. I am horrified at the things he did when he was a young man. What's to be done? The manuscript must be intercepted before it reaches Riggs and Ballinger and destroyed. I sat up. This sounded rather sporting. How are you going to do it? I inquired. How can I do it? Didn't I tell you the parcel goes off tomorrow? I'm going to the Murgatroyd's dance tonight and I shan't be back till Monday. You must do it. This is why I telegraphed to you. What? She gave me a look. Do you mean to say you refuse to help me, Bertie? No, but I say. It's quite simple. But even if what I mean is, of course, anything I can do, but if you know what I mean. You say you want to marry me, Bertie? Yes, of course, but still. For a moment she looked exactly like her old father. I will never marry you if those recollections are published. But Florence, old thing. I mean it. We look at it as a test, Bertie. Having the resource and courage to carry this thing through, I take as evidence you are not the vapid and shiftless person most people think you. If you fail, she have noted your friend Agatha was right. She called you a spineless invertebrate and advised me strongly not to marry you. It would be perfectly simple for you to intercept the manuscript, Bertie, and only requires a little resolution. But surely Uncle Willoughby catches me at it. He cut me off without a bob. If you care more for your uncle's money from me, no, no, rather not. Very well then. The parcel containing the manuscript will, of course, be placed on the table tomorrow for Oakshott to take to the village with the letters. All you have to do is take it away and destroy it. Then your uncle will think it has been lost in the post. It sounded thin to me. Hasn't he got a copy of it? No, it has not been typed. He's sending the manuscript just as he wrote it. But he can write it over again, as if he would have the energy. But if you could do anything but make absurd objections, Bertie, I was only pointing things out. Well, don't. Once for all, will you do me this quite simple act of kindness? The way she put it gave me an idea. Why don't you get Edwin to do it? Keep it in the family sort of thing, don't you know? Besides, it would be a boon to the kid. A jolly bright idea, it seemed to me. Edwin was a younger brother, who was spending his holidays at Easby. He was a ferret-faced kid whom I had disliked since birth. As a matter of fact, talking of recollections and memories, it was young Bayard Edwin who, 9 years before, had led his father to where I was smoking his cigar and caused all the unpleasantness. He was 14 now and had just joined the Boy Scouts. He was one of those thorough kids and took his responsibilities pretty seriously. He was always in a sort of fever because he was dropping behind schedule with his daily acts of kindness. However hard he tried, he'd fall behind. Then you'd find him prowling about the house. Suddenly such equipped to try and catch up with himself that Easby was roughly becoming a perfect hell for man and beast. The idea didn't seem to strike Florence. I should do nothing of the kind, Bertie. When do you can't appreciate the compliment I'm paying you, treating me like this? Oh, I see that all right. What I mean is, everyone would do it so much better than I would. Those Boy Scouts are all up to all sorts of dodges. They sport, you know, and take cover and creep about and whatnot. Bertie, will you or will you not do this perfectly trivial thing for me? If not, say so now, and let us end this farce of pretending that you care a snip of the fingers for me. Dear old soul, I love you devotedly. Then will you or will you not? Oh, all right, I said. All right, all right, all right. And then I tottered forth to think it over. I met Jeeves on the passage just outside. I beg your pardon, sir. I was endeavouring to find you. What's the matter? I thought I should tell you, sir, that somebody's been putting black polish on all our brown walking shoes. What? Who? Why? I could not say, sir. Can anything be done with them? Nothing, sir. Damn. Very good, sir. I've often wondered since how these murderer fellows manage to keep in shape while they're contemplating their next effort. I had a much simpler sort of job on hand, and the sight of what rattled me to such an extent in the night watches that was a perfect wreck next day. Dark circles on the eyes, I give him my word. I had to call on Jeeves to rally round with one of those lifesavers of his. From breakfast on, I felt like a bag snatcher at a railway station. I had to hang about waiting for the package to be put on the hall table, and it wasn't put. Uncle Willoughby was a fixture in the library, adding the finishing touches to the great work, I supposed. The more I thought the thing over, the less I liked it. Just against my pulling off seemed about 3-2, and the sight of it would happen if I didn't give me cold shivers down the spine. Old Willoughby was a pretty mild sort of old boy as a rule, but I've known him to cut it rough, and by Jove, he was scared to extend himself as he couldn't be trying to get away with his life work. It wasn't until nearly 4 when he toddled out of the library with a parcel on his arm, put it on the table, and toddled off again. I was hiding a bit to the southeast at the moment, behind a suit of armour. I bounded out and legged it for the table. Then I nipped upstairs to hide the swag. I charged in like a mustang and nearly stubbed my toe on young Blighted Edwin, the Boy Scout. He was standing at the chest of drawers, confounding, messing about with my ties. Hello, he said. What are you doing here? I'm tidying your room. It's my last Saturday's act of kindness. Last Saturday's? I'm 5 days behind. I was 6 last night, but I fell off your shoes. Was it you? Yes, did you see them? Just think of it. I was in here looking around. Mr. Berkeley had this room when you were away. He left this morning. I thought perhaps he might have left something in it that I could have sent on. I've often done acts of kindness that way. It must be a comfort to one and all. It became more and more apparent to me that this infernal kid must somehow be turned out eftsoons or right speedily. hidden the parcel behind my back, and I didn't think he'd seen it, but wanted to get in that chest of drawers quick before anyone else came along. I shouldn't bother the tiny room, I said. I like tidying it. It's not a bit of trouble, really. But it's quite tidy now. Not as tidy as I shall make it. This was getting perfectly rotten. I didn't want to murder the kid, and yet there didn't seem to be any other way of shifting him. I pressed down the metal accelerator. The old lemons frothed fiercely. I got an idea. Something much kinder than that which you could do, I said. You see that box of cigars? Take it down to the smoking room and snip the ends off for me. That would save me no end of trouble. Stagger along, laddie. He seemed a bit doubtful, but he staggered. Shoved the parcel into a drawer, locked it, transferred the key, and felt better. Maybe a chump, but dash it, I could out-general a mere kid with a face like a ferret. Went downstairs again, just as I was passing the smoking room door. Out, servant Edwin. Seemed to me if he wanted to do a real good act of kindness, he would commit suicide. I'm snipping him, he said. Snip on, snip on. Do you like to sniff much, or a little bit? Medium. All right, I'll be getting on then. I should. And we parted. Fellows who knew all about this sort of thing, detectives and so on, would tell you the most difficult thing in the world is to get rid of the body. I remember as a kid having to learn by heart a poem about a bird by the name of Eugene Urim, who had the deuce of a job in this respect. All I can recall of the actual poetry is the bit that goes, tum-tum, 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 I slew him, tum-tum-tum. But I recollect the poor blighter spent most of his valuable time dipping the corpse into ponds and burying it, and whatnot, only to have it pop out at him again. It was about an hour later after I shut the parcel into the drawer, when I realized I got myself in for just that same sort of thing. Thomas had talked in an area sort of way about destroying the manuscript. Well, when one came down to it, how the deuce can a chap destroy a great chunky mass of paper in someone else's house in the middle of summer? Couldn't ask to have a fire in my bosom with a thermometer in the 80s. And if I didn't burn the thing, I was gotta get rid of it. Fellows on the battlefield eat dispatches to keep them falling into the hands of the enemy. Would have taken me a year to eat Uncle Willoughby's recollections. I'm bound to say the problem absolutely baffled me. The only thing seemed to be to leave the parcel in the drawer and hope for the best. I don't know whether you have imagined it, but it's a dashed pleasant thing having a crime on one's conscience. Towards the end of the day, the mere sight of the drawer began to depress me. I found myself getting all on edge, and once when Uncle Willoughby tripped aside and struck me when I was alone there and spoke to me before he knew he was there, I broke the record for the sitting high jump. I was wondering all the time when Uncle Willoughby would sit up and take notice. Didn't think he would have time to suspect anything had gone wrong till Saturday morning, when he would be expecting, of course, to get acknowledgment of the manuscript from the publishers. But early on Friday evening he came out of the library as I was passing and asked me to step in. He was looking considerably razzled. Bertie, he said. He was spoken in a most precise sort of pompous kind of way. A exceedingly disturbing thing has happened. As you know, I dispatched the manuscript of my book to Messrs. Riggs and Ballinger, the publishers, yesterday afternoon. You should have reached them by post first this morning. Why it should have been easy, I cannot say, but my mind was not altogether at rest respecting the safety of the parcel. I therefore telephoned to Messrs. Riggs and Ballinger a few moments ago to make inquiries. To my consternation, they informed me they were not yet in receipt of my manuscript. Very rum. I recollect distinctly placing myself on the hall table in good time to be taken to the village. But here's the sinister thing. I've spoken to Oakshott, who took the rest of the letters to the post office, and he can't recall seeing it there. It was indeed unswerving his assertions that when we went to the hall to collect the letters, there was no parcel among them. Sounds funny. Bertie, shall I tell you what I suspect? What's that? The suspicion will no doubt sound to you incredible, but it almost seems to fit the facts as we know them. I incline to the belief the parcel had been stolen. Oh, I say, surely not. Wait, hear me out. Though I said nothing to you before, or anyone else concerning the matter, the fact remains that during the past 2 weeks a number of objects, some valuable, others not, have disappeared in this house. The conclusion to which one is irresistibly impelled is that we have a kleptomaniac in our midst. It is a peculiarity of kleptomania, as you are no doubt aware. Somebody is unable to differentiate between the intrinsic value of objects. He will purloin his old coat as readily as a diamond ring, or tobacco costing but a few shillings with the same eagerness as a purse of gold. The fact this manuscript mine should be of possible value to any outside person convinces me that But look, at one moment, I know all about these things that were stolen. It was Meadows, my man, who pinched them. I caught him snaffling my silk socks. Right in the act, by Jove. He was tremendously impressed. You amaze me, Bertie. Sent for the man at once and questioned him. But he isn't here. See, directly I found he was a sock sneaker, I gave him the boot. That's why I went to London, to get a new man. There's a man Meadows no longer in the house. It cannot be he who purloined my manuscript. The whole thing is inexplicable. After which we brooded for a bit. Uncle Willoughby pottered about the room, registering baffledness, while I sat sucking a cigarette, feeling rather like a chappie I had once read about in a book, who murdered another cove and hid the body under the dining room table. And it had to be the life and soul of a dinner party with her all the time. My guilty secret pressed me to such an extent after a while I couldn't stick it any longer. I lit another cigarette and started for a stroll in the gardens by way of cooling off. One of those still evenings you get in the summer, and you hear a snail stood a mile away. The sun was sinking over the hills, and the gnats were flying about all over the place, and everything smelled of the topping, well, the falling dew and so on. I was beginning to feel just a little soothed by the peace of it all, when suddenly I heard my name spoken. It's about Bertie. It was the loathsome voice of young, blighted Edwin. For a moment I couldn't locate it, then I realized it came from the library. My stroll had taken me within a few yards of the open window. I never wondered how those Johnnies in books did it. I mean, the fellows with whom it was the work of a moment to do by a dozen things that ought to take them about 10 minutes. But as a matter of fact, it was the work of a moment for me to chuck away my cigarette, swear a bit, leave about 10 yards, dive into a bush that stood near the library window, and stand there with my ears flapping. I was as certain as I'd ever been that all sorts of rotten things were in the offing. About Bertie, I heard Uncle Willoughby say. About Bertie and your parcel. What are you talking of just now? I believe he's got it. When I say that just as I heard those frightful words, a fairly substantial sort of beetle dropped down the bush down the back of my neck, and I couldn't even stir to squash the same, you understand that I felt pretty rotten. Everything seemed against me. What do you mean, boy? I was just discussing the disappearing of my manuscript with Bertie only moments ago, and he professed himself as perplexed by the mystery as myself. While I was in his room yesterday, doing an act of kindness, he came out with a parcel. I could see it, though he tried to keep it behind his back, and he asked me to go to the smoking room and nip some cigars for him. But 2 minutes afterwards he came down. He wasn't carrying anything, so it must be in his room. I understand they deliberately tease these dashed Boy Scouts to cultivate their powers of observation, deduction, and what not. Devilish thoughtlessness and inconsiderate and all, I call it. Look at the trouble it causes. It sounds incredible, said Uncle Willoughby, thereby bucking me up a trifle. Shall I go and look at his room? Asked the young blighted Edwin. I've seen the parcels there. But what could be his motive for perpetuating this extraordinary theft? Perhaps he's what you said just now. A kleptomaniac? Impossible. It might have been Bertie who took the things from the very start, suggested the little brute, hopefully. He may be like Raffles. Raffles? He's a jack in a book who went about pinching things. Can't believe that Bertie would go, about pinching things. Well, I'm sure he's got the parcel. Tell you what you might do. You might say to Mr. Berkeley Wire, did you leave something there? He had Bertie's room, you know. You might say you wanted to look for it. That would be possible. I didn't wait to hear any more. Things were getting too hot. Sneaked softly out of my bush and raced for the front door. Sprinted out to my room, I moved for the drawer where I put the parcel, and then found I hadn't the key. It wasn't for the deuce of a time I recollect I searched into my evening trousers the night before. I must have forgotten to take it out again. What had taken from my evening things? I looked all over the place, for I remembered that Jeeves must have taken them away to brush. To leap at the bell and ring it was, with me, the work of a moment. I just rung it when there was a footstep outside, and in came Uncle Willoughby. Oh, Bertie, he said without a blush. I have, received a telegram from Berkeley, occupied this room in your absence, asking me to forward his cigarette case, which would appear inadvertently admitted to come with him, took him with him when he left the house. Can't find it downstairs, and therefore it occurred to me you may have left it in this room. I will, just take a look around. It was one of the most disgusting spectacles I've ever seen. This white-haired old man, who should have been thinking of the hereafter, standing there lying like an actor. Haven't seen it anywhere, I said. Nevertheless, I will search. I must, spare no effort. I should have seen it if it had been there. What? May have escaped your notice. It is possibly in one of the drawers. He began to nose about. He pulled out drawer after drawer, putting around like a low bloodhound and babbling from time to time about burgling the cigarette case in a way that struck me as perfectly ghastly. I just stood there, losing weight every moment. Then he came to the drawer where the parcel was. This appears to be locked, he said, rattling the handle. Yes, I shouldn't bother about one. It's locked and all that sort of thing. You have not the key? Soft respectful voice spoke behind me. I fancy so. This must be the key you require. It was in the pocket of your evening trousers. It was Jeeves. He had shimmered in, carrying my evening things, and was standing there holding out the key. I could have massacred the man. Thank you, said my uncle. Not at all, sir. The next moment Uncle Willoughby opened a drawer. I shut my eyes. No, sir, Willoughby, there's nothing here. The drawer is empty. Thank you, Bertie. I hope I've not disturbed you. I fancy, Bertie must have taken the keys with him after all. When he had gone, I shut the drawer carefully. Then I turned to Jeeves. The man was putting my evening things out in a chair. Jeeves? Sir? Oh, nothing. It was dashed difficult to know how to begin. Jeeves? Sir? Have you by chance... I removed the parcel this morning, sir. Oh, why? I considered it more prudent, sir. I mused for a while. Of course, I suppose all this seems tolerably rummy to you, Jeeves? Not at all, sir. Just to overhear you and Lady Florence speaking of the matter of the other evening, sir. Did you, by Jove? Yes, sir. Well, Jeeves, I think that, on the whole, if you were to, as it were, freeze on our parcels till we get back to London... Exactly, sir. Then we might, so to speak, tuck it away somewhere. What? Precisely, sir. I'll leave it in your hands. Entirely, sir. You know, Jeeves, you're by way of being rather a topper. I endeavour to give satisfaction, sir. What do you mean, by Jove? It's very kind of you to say so, sir. Well, that's about it then, I think. Very good, sir. Florence came back on Monday. Didn't see her till we were all having tea in the hall. It wasn't until the crowd had cleared away a bit we got a chance of having a word together. Well, Bertie, she said, it's all right. You've destroyed the manuscript? Not exactly, but what do you mean? I mean, I haven't absolutely... Bertie, your manner is furtive. It's all right, just this way. Just going to explain how things stood when out of the library came leaping Uncle Willoughby, looking as braced as a 2-year-old. The old boy was a changed man. Most remarkable thing, Bertie. Just am thinking Mr. Briggs on the telephone, and he tells me he received manuscript by the first post this morning. Can't imagine what can have caused the delay. Our postal facilities are extremely inadequate in the rural districts. I should write to headquarters about it. It's insufferable if valuable parcels have to be delayed in this fashion. I happen to be looking at Florence's profile at the moment. That juncture she strung round and gave me a look that went straight to me like a knife. Uncle Willoughby meandered back to the library, and it was a silence you could have dug bits out of with a spoon. I can't understand it, I said at last. I can't understand it, by Jove. I can. I can understand it perfectly, Bertie. Your heart failure. Rather than risk you offending your uncle, you... No, absolutely. You prefer to lose me rather than risk losing the money. Perhaps you try to think I meant what I said. I meant every word. Our engagement is ended. But, I say... Not another word. But Florence, old thing. I do not wish to hear any more. See now, your Uncle Agatha was perfectly right. I consider I've had a very lucky escape. There was a time when I thought that, with patience, you might mould into something worthwhile. See now that you are impossible. And she popped off, leaving me to pick up the pieces. When I collected the debris to some extent, I went to my room and rang for Jeeves. It came in looking as if nothing had happened that was ever going to happen. It was the calmest thing in captivity. Jeeves, I yelled. Jeeves, that parcel arrived in London. Yes, sir. Did you send it? Yes, sir. Acted for the best, sir. I think that both you and Lady Florence overestimate the danger of people being offended at being mentioned in Sir Willoughby's recollections. It's been my experience, sir, that no more person enjoys seeing his or her name in print, irrespective of what is said about them. I have an aunt, sir, who a few years ago was a martyr to swollen limbs. She tried Walkinshaw Supreme which obtained considerable relief. So much so that she sent them an unsolicited testimonial. Her pride at seeing her photograph in the daily papers in conjunction with descriptions of her logos before taking, which nothing less than revolting, was so intense that made me believe that publicity, of whatever sort, is what nearly everybody desires. Moreover, if you were studying philosophy, sir, you would know that respectable gentlemen are by no means averse to having advertised they were extremely wild in their youth. I have an uncle. I cursed his aunt since I got under him and all the rest of the family. Do you know that Lady Florence has broken off her engagement with me? Indeed, sir. Not a bit of sympathy. Might have been telling him it was a fine day. You're sacked. Very good, sir. He coughed gently. As I am no longer in employment, sir, I can speak freely without appearing to take a liberty. In my opinion, you and Lady Florence were quite unsuitably matched. A relationship of a highly determined and arbitrary temperament, quite opposed to your own. I was in Lord Warpstone's service for nearly a year, during which time I had opportunity to study her ladyship. The opinions of the servants' hall was far from favourable to her. Her ladyship's temper caused a great deal of adverse comment among us. It was at times quite impossible. You would not have been happy, sir. Get out. I think you also found her educational methods a little trying, sir. I have glanced at the book her ladyship gave you. It's been lying on her table since her arrival, and it is, in my opinion, quite unsuitable. You would not have enjoyed it. I have it from her ladyship's own maid. I have it over here a conversation with her ladyship and one gentleman staying here, Mr. Maxwell, who is employed in an editorial capacity by one of the reviews. It was her intention to start you almost immediately upon Nietzsche. You would not enjoy Nietzsche, sir. He is fundamentally unsound. Get out. Very good, sir. Remembering how sleeping on the thing often makes you feel quite different about it. It happened to be over and over again. Somehow or other, when I woke next morning, the old heart didn't feel half so broke as it had done. It was a perfectly topping day. There was something about the way the sun came in at the window and the row of the birds were kicking up on the ivy that made me half wonder whether Jeeves wasn't right. After all, though she had a wonderful profile, was it such a catch being engaged to Florence Cray as the casual observer might imagine? Was there something in which Jeeves had said about her character? I began to realize my ideal wife was something quite different. Something a lot more clinging and drooping and prattling and whatnot. I had got as far as in thinking the thing out when the types of ethical theory caught my eye. I opened it and I gave him my honest word that this was what hit me. Of the two antithetical terms in the Greek philosophy, one only was real and self-subsisting, and that one was ideal thought, as opposed to that which it has to penetrate and mould. The other, corresponding to our nature, was in itself phenomenal, unreal, without any permanent footing, having no predicates that held true for 2 minutes together. In short, redeemed from negation only by including indwelling realities appearing through. Well, I mean to say, what? And Nietzsche, from all accounts, a lot worse than that. Jeeves, I said, when I came with my morning tea, I've been thinking it over. You're engaged again. Thank you, sir. I sucked down a cheerful mouthful. Great respect for this book's judgment began to soak through me. Oh, Jeeves, I said, how about that check suit? Yes, sir. Is it really frost? A trifle too bizarre, sir, in my opinion. But lots of fellows have asked me who my tailor is. Doubtless in order to avoid him, sir. He's supposed to be one of the best men in London. I am saying nothing against his moral character, sir. I hesitated a bit. I did feel like I was passing into this Tappy's clutches. If I gave in now, I should become just like poor old Aubrey Fossilgill, unable to call my soul my own. On the other hand, this is obviously a cove of rare intelligence, and it would be a comfort in a lot of ways to have him doing the thinking for me. I made up my mind. All right, Jeeves, I said, give the bally thing away to somebody. He looked down at me like a father gazing tenderly at the wayward child. Thank you, sir. I gave it to the undergardener last night. A little more tea, sir. The end.